Good afternoon. My name is Janae Pierre, and I'm the founder and owner of the Woman's Earth Nurturing Studio. The Woman's Earth is located in 3rd Ward, a historical area in Houston, Texas, where we offer individual services to promote holistic health. And we also offer the studio as a vessel and platform for women to come in and promote their products, their services, and businesses. And it's also a place where we do the series that we're launching at this moment called How She Does the Work. And one of the co-contributors and powerful forces in bringing this series is Maya Carroll, who is the executive director and founder of Phoenix Women's Outreach. We are also joined by Yolanda Ross, who's going to be featured in launching this series, How She Does the Work. She's going to walk us through her story, her life, and how she came across a turn, and it was a lot of adversity, very challenging, but then how she overcame that and walked into an abundance of blessings. So I'd like to just start off and ask Maya if you can just tell us a little bit about Phoenix Women's Outreach.
Phoenix Women's Outreach is a nonprofit organization focused on women and children where we help them overcome different struggles. Our mission is to regenerate, to rejuvenate, and to restore one woman and child at a time.
Awesome. And how can we get in touch with Phoenix Women's Outreach? What is your website?
You can go to phoenixwomensoutreach.org. We do have a link on there. It's info@phoenixwomensoutreach.org if you have any questions or any information that you want to know about Phoenix Women's Outreach.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And Yolanda,
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you here today. We're just going to kind of walk through that.
Okay. My name is Yolanda Ross. I am born and raised in Houston, Texas. I grew up in the Sunnyside, South Park area. I come from a middle-class family. I had a mother and father. I am the youngest of 3 children, considered the baby girl. I let's see, very loving family. We were very spiritual, and I was raised very well, I have to say, compared to the standards of what they're saying about the African American family today. I was very active in gymnastics. I was a majorette, and I excelled in school because in order for me to stay a majorette, stay in gymnastics, I had to keep my grades up. So, I am a graduate of Ebony Worthing High School, class of '88. From there, I started going to TSU and ended up going to University of Houston downtown, and just a variety of things that happened in my life that derailed me into a world of chaos.
Okay. So this is a young student that has been able to participate in a lot of recreational activities that probably some of your neighbors or friends weren't able to afford.
Right.
And you did well.
Very well.
And you went on to college and started your studies there. So this sounds like a pretty bright future, and you're fast pacing it. So tell us, how did things turn for you?
Growing up, I guess I can say I had an identity crisis.
Okay.
I aspired to be a part of the popular crowd, and so even though I was talented, I was very smart, I was not very popular due to, I was teased a lot for the color of my skin. I was teased a lot because I had nappy hair. So growing up, I guess you could say I had an identity crisis in which I started bleaching my skin as early as in junior high. My mom, pressing my hair, perming my hair, getting jerry curls, trying to look a part of the popular scene. And what had happened was that, I started you know, hanging out with the popular kids and what they were doing, drinking, doing some recreational drug use. And though I never got into the marijuana use because I didn't like the way it made me feel, I was very active in drinking. I was known in high school as the party girl. You know, I remember during our high school outing, we had to go see the movie School Days. And in the middle of the movie theater, I remember there was a bottle rolling down the aisle. And everybody said, "We know that's Yolanda, she got her drink," you know.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, because when I drank, I was so light. I was like the life of the party. Well, that excelled into my early 20s, and I went to TSU for a minute, and then I went to Universities in downtown, and with all this financial aid money coming in, my recreational drinking, I started experimenting with other drugs. You know, I just went straight into crack cocaine, and they were laced it with marijuana. So it just propelled into increments into my grades at universities in downtown started to decrease. I wasn't going to work anymore, and just it went very, very crazy in the early 90s, in which I ended up going to jail for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. And I was put on 3 years probation. And during the midst of all that chaos, my mother and my father were still there for me, holding my hand through the whole process, believing in me. And I went into rehab just to appease them, you know. Well, I did fine for a while. You know, went back to school, started doing well. And they kept telling me in recovery that relapse is a part of addiction. So I thought that was my permission to relapse, you know. So ended up relapsing and just, you know, descended into drugs even worse. In 1996, they revoked my probation.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
When you were going through those moments of drinking, and then you progressed to cocaine, and you progressed, you know, as you got your hands on financial aid and things like that, do you ever remember thinking, you know, that this was not good for you? Or was there what thoughts were going through your head?
Yeah, I knew it wasn't good for me because I saw the pain that I caused my mother and my father, the arguments that were going on, the disappointment in my mother's eyes. My mother was like, you know, she was so strong-willed to the point where she didn't tolerate it. My father, he was like my rescuer. I would go out and get high, and he would go and come pick me up. He was so concerned about me, he would drive me to the crack house just to see where I was at. And when I was ready to come home, he would come get me. Because he was so concerned about me. I would go to jail, he would be the one to bail me out back with go to jail, he would be the one to put money on books. He would be the one to come and get me. He was my biggest enabler. When my mother was like, "I love you, but I'm going to love you enough to let you go." You know, and I used that to my advantage. Because, you know, going in and out of jail, the drinking, the drug, relapsing, there was no consequences. Because I would always go home to mommy and dad. So, fast forward to 1996 when my probation was revoked. Found I was pregnant for the first time in my life. Mother and father came all the way to Dayton, Texas, put me in my books. I'm just, you know, it was a breeze for me because I had people supporting me. I got out 2 weeks later. I was like 5 months pregnant. I made a vow that I wasn't going to drink anymore, drinking drugs, and within 2 weeks out of jail, I went back out and I used. And it angered my mother and my father. I knew doing crack cocaine was wrong. I knew, but I did not know that I didn't think drinking was wrong.
Okay.
You know.
And we find that a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
You know, the fact that, first of all, alcohol is legal.
It's very
Right.
legal, and I
Okay.
saw my sister drinking her pregnancy, so
Mhm.
I didn't think that drinking was wrong, but the way I was
Mhm.
drinking was like really, I was a binge drinker.
Mhm.
So I made up my mind 2 weeks before I delivered my baby that I was going to stay clean and sober because I didn't want anything to come up in my system.
Mhm.
So I gave birth to the 7-pound, 11.4-ounce baby girl who I named Hannah Simone. And from the moment she was born, I knew something was wrong. And there was major developmental delays. And again, I made up my mind I was going to stay clean and sober. And I did. For 1 year, I stayed clean and sober for the sake of my child.
Mhm.
And as a celebration moment, I went out and I used, and I left her for over a week with my
Mhm.
parents. And again, my dad came and found me, brought me home, and just descended worse into drugs, drinking and drugging. I accumulated again another two misdemeanors in that time, and then fast forward to 2000s, the year 2000, ascended deeper into drugs and alcohol, ascended to the point where I accumulated 2 more felonies and another misdemeanor. And the turning point came was, well, stop right there. I can't say the turning point. The reality was in January 25th, 2005, I received a phone call from the city of Houston stating they didn't want to talk to me about a test.
Mhm.
Mind you, when I was out there in my addiction, I was prostituting,
Okay.
you know, to support my habit. And so they called and my dad took me down there. They told me I was HIV positive.
Mhm.
I didn't say anything to my father when I got back into the truck, but I told my mother, and the words that came out of her mouth said, when I told her I was HIV positive, she said, well, take it back where you got it from. So that was my permission to go and get high. Because that same day I found out HIV, that was the same day I got a big income tax return.
Wow.
So I left and I went and got high, then 8 days later, went back to jail.
So who's caring for?
Hannah,
Yeah.
my mother, my father, and my sister.
Okay.
I did 7 months
Mhm.
in Plain State Jail, and then I was released September 2nd, 2012. No, sorry, I was released September 2nd, 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, I was released.
And what state of mind were you in when you were released? What did those
The
last
state of
7
mind.
months do?
I was doing really well. Again, mind you, my mother and father supported me, took very good care of me. I didn't have to want for nothing in jail.
Mm.
My dad would come visit, $100 on my books every 2 weeks. You know, so no worries. I remember my dad, when he came visit me, he says, baby, I don't know how long I can be able to do this if you come back down here again. And that was a wake-up call, because I was like, if I go back to jail, who's going to support me? Who's going to come visit me?
Would you say that jail was a safe haven for you at the time?
It was an inconvenience.
Okay. So it was an inconvenience
It was
because
very
you're away from.
From whatever I wanted to do, yeah.
Okay.
I used to get arrested and say, darn, I wasn't smart enough. Darn,
So
I
you
shouldn't have
said-
gotten that car.
You said it was a wake-up call when your dad said, "Hey."
Yeah, that was very scary because you have to understand when you go to jail, there's they give you the necessities, and it's not a lot, you know. But if you have money on your books, you can get other extra things, and it was like home away from home.
Okay. That's the feeling that I was getting. So this is 2005.
Yeah.
You were released from jail. How did you connect to Phoenix Women's Outreach?
Well, I was released September 2nd, 2005. September 12th, I was back in Sunnyside. I smoked up $1,000 worth of crack cocaine in 3 days. came home. My mother and father had all my things packed. They wouldn't let me in the house. They said, you cannot come back here unless you get help. And as my father was driving me to the treatment facility, because I found the treatment facility before Phoenix called Karen on. So he was driving me, my dad was driving. I'm angry. I'm spewing profanity. I'm sweating, I'm twitching, I'm tweaking. My dad's crying, he's driving, he's talking to himself, and as we get to the facility, he literally falls into the arms of the counselor, and he says, I can't do this. She's killing me. And that was my bottle. And I stayed there for 3 months. And as I was there getting treatment, there were times that I could have walked out the door and get high, but I didn't. I inspired to go back to school, so I can do probation. And I went through the appeal process, and I enrolled, got my financial aid back. In January 2006, I enrolled at His Community College. And I enrolled in a program called TRIO. And I excelled from there. I excelled. I mean, I became a rising star. And Jose Salazar and Latanya Jones knew my story, and I spoke about my story at the graduation. Well, Maya was there. They introduced her first, and she shared her story. And then I came up behind her, and I told my story. And then next thing you know, about a year, 2 years later, Miss Jones calls and says, there's a lady by the name of Maya Carroll. She was one of the students who graduated with you. She was so inspired by your story. She wants to talk to you. She has a nonprofit. Is she hiring? Right. So, is she hiring? And I connected with her, and because I only saw her in passing at school. This is 2009 when and so she told me about the Phoenix Women's Center, and I told her, yes, I would love to be a part of it. Whatever I can do, whatever you need me to do, I'm there. So she contacted me and asked me to share my story at an event. And I shared my story, and I must have made an impact because she's been calling me ever since. What has the Phoenix Women's Center? I did some research on it, and it's very empowering because I was looking at the testimonies, and even though I've never been a victim of domestic violence or abuse or sexual abuse, I can identify with the fact of living with HIV. I can identify with the fact of living with having a child with a disability which I caused. I can live with the fact that I have encountered the stigma against me for having HIV, because while me having HIV, there were times when my sister was like, don't kiss her, don't kiss your daughter. And until I had to educate them on about HIV, how it's no longer a death sentence. It's no longer a death sentence. And I'm a proud African American woman who can say, yes, I'm living with HIV, but that does not define who I am. I share my story about my daughter Hannah, who has fetal alcohol syndrome. Now that's a subject in which I do receive a lot of stigma, because the people look at me and say, how could you?
Right.
How could you do that to your child? Well, I didn't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to do this to affect my child. I have a disease of addiction. Just like diabetes, if I don't treat it by staying clean and sober, by staying connected to my sponsor, by working the steps, I can die from it.
What would you say to a woman that hasn't reached that breaking point right now? If she was looking at you today and she hasn't met Maya yet, and she doesn't know, she's just at that point where she's feeling like I I'm done. The only thing I can do is just get high or just retreat from this reality. What would you say to her?
Well, organizations like the Phoenix Women Outreach Program, pick up the phone and call, because I genuinely believe that if a woman is going through a crisis like this, she's just needing someone to talk to. She needs an outlet. Because, especially being women of color, and living with shame, that what keeps us in the closet. My husband's abusing me, or I'm a former prostitute, or I am a substance abuser, or I'm an alcoholic. And they look at us like, okay, we're Jezebels, we welfare queens and everything. And organizations like the Phoenix Women Center is an outlet where they can just pick up the phone and call and just get some type of hope or guidance, where they can call an individual on the line and not be stigmatized and not be demoralized or devalued.
A safe, secure
place. Yeah, where they can call somebody and they'll say, I'm not here to judge you. Let me help you. Let me facilitate in the helping process and help you. And
that's a beautiful thing. I can see how, I see why you are an advocate. Your story may be different from someone else's, but if you're suffering from feeling like you have stigma against you, or there's no safe place, whether you suffer from molestation, whether you, like you said, you have a background or a past and you feel like you don't want to tell anyone or share that poisons our spirits, when we hold that type of thing in. So I just commend you.
Thank you.
I mean, you have overcome what some people would say no one could ever overcome that.
And like I said, I am a living testimony, because when I graduated with my associate's degree, I went into University of Clear Lake, got my bachelor's of social work.
Congratulations.
And I'm in the master's program.
Awesome.
I am a woman with 3 felonies and 3 misdemeanors, and society says, oh, you could not get a job. Well, I made such an impression. I must have made an impression at my former internship, because it hired me on as a full-time case manager. And I have to all bring it back to God, my higher power, because if I hadn't had a praying mother and a praying father, even though I'm grateful for the opportunity for Maya, for reaching out to me, for calling me and saying, your story touched me. And that, it brings me goosebumps right now.
I have goosebumps too.
I did not know my story was going to help someone. And so I'm not ashamed to let individuals know there is hope to change.
That's what helped you, because you're not ashamed.
Right. So I've developed thick skin over years. So.
Well, absolutely beautiful, and I just thank you, and I thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I know your story is going to reach and touch many women. And Maya, how can women reach you? What's the phone number? Give us the website again.
You can reach me from the website. It's phoenixwomensoutreach.org. And we do have an email address at info@phoenixwomensoutreach.org.
Okay, info@phoenixwomensoutreach.org, and we will also have that information on the Woman's Earth website. We want to thank Ms. Ross for coming in today and sharing with us. She is definitely a trailblazer in how she does her work in her community, and congratulations.
Thank you.
You're accomplishing more than what many people have accomplished with even half of the triumphs.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and tune in for the next How She Does the Work. Thank you.